Welcome to the next assembly video for the RepRap Prusa i3. Let's go ahead and set aside the x-axis for a moment and let's get started on the top section of the frame and the z-axis. Okay, we'll need the z-axis components. There will be these two parts here for the motor mounts that will get attached to the frame down here. You'll notice that there's 3 bolt holes here, which line up with these 3 bolt holes here, and then also on the top section there's a large hole here for the smooth rod and 3 holes to mount the motor on both sides. They're the same part, just mirrored. These will take M3 bolts. Directly into the frame. Be careful not to over tighten these, since this is aluminum and these are stainless steel bolts. You could strip out the threads on the aluminum before you strip out the threads on the bolts. So be careful not to over tighten them. After they get snug, just give them each like about a quarter turn. That should be good. Okay, and now the motors will be mounted here, and you'll notice that there's a hole here in the frame on each side, and that's actually for the wire, so you can run the wire through there. Now these motors in the Northwest RepRap kit will actually come with the computer socket connection already installed. So if you wanted to, there's a few options you could choose at this point. You can either cut the end off and use the supplied computer socket connections with the crimp tool to reattach them later. That way you can fit it through the hole. Or you can just not put it through the hole and just run it around the side of the RepRap if you wanted to, like that. Or you can very carefully remove the computer socket connection which can be kind of difficult. You have to pull up on the little tabs and then pull the wire out like that. Not sure how well you can see that. But as soon as you pull up the little tab, you can get the wire out. Okay, and you could save that for later. Just push all the things back down. If you happen to accidentally destroy this part, it's not a big deal because there are extras in here. Okay, need to do that to the other motor too. If you choose to use a knife for this, please be very careful not to cut yourself. Maybe a very small screwdriver would work too. Actually, a small screwdriver would probably work a lot better. I should have thought of that and grabbed one. I'll try to remember for later. But I don't think we'll need to do this again, actually. And normally, I actually just cut these off and make new ends. Okay, and I kind of destroyed that one, so I'm going to throw it away. All right. So now you should be able to fit the wires through the holes in the frame. Kind of makes it a little cleaner. And I'll show you here. You can mount it so that the wires just come directly through the hole. Let's go ahead and do this one first. Oops. Okay, this will be secured. This side will be secured with M3 bolts. The other side is going to be a little bit different because the end stop switch will be mounted on that side. These take a little bit of time to get on because you can't turn the Allen key all the way around. You know, if you have a socket wrench with really long extension, you could probably do it that way. Or a really long screwdriver with a hex end. I probably do have enough extensions that I could link together to do that, but I think it would take me less time just to use the Allen key than it would to go get them. So. But next time I build an i3, I will remember to get my extensions and a screwdriver for this. Yeah, let's go ahead and do the other motor. Okay, on this side, we'll be mounting the end stop switch holder, and so I believe we will need two 10mm M3s and one 14mm. That'll do the trick. And actually, before we mount this, oh, actually, we'll need three M3s, 10mm. Let's go ahead and get the back side of this started, actually. And actually, let's go ahead and get these snug too. Since they're going in nice and smooth. Those are the hardest ones. Just kind of get them snug there. Okay. And let's actually go ahead and assemble the Z end stop holder. This takes a 30mm M3 bolt, a spring. These are one of the piano springs, the same springs that you use for the bed, and an M3 nut. The M3 nut, so just to get a good look at this, this is the end stop holder here. Or yeah, and then so bolt will go in here, or nut will go in here in this slot. And just squeeze it through. Make sure that it lines up in the hole in the top. And then the bolt will go through the top section of this part, like that, so that you can see the bolt coming through the other side. And the spring will go on the bolt, like that. And then notice how you have a protrusion here on this side of the part, and a protrusion here on this side of the part. Just match up those protrusions, like that. Okay. Get that bolt lined up with the nut that you put in there. You can go ahead and compress it with your hand and tighten that bolt down to about halfway or so, a little bit more. Actually, You want to leave about, I don't know, maybe about 5 millimeters or so there, and that should be pretty good. The end stop switch will be mounted in this slot here, and then you can adjust the Z end stop switch by tightening and loosening this bolt here. Okay, and then this will get mounted here. Uh, 10 millimeter bolt on this side, and the 14 millimeter bolt on this side. You just use the the bolt mounts to the motor on this side, and then on this side, the bolt goes through the end stop holder and the Z end stop part here, and then into the motor. Okay, and that should do it. All right. Okay, next let's go ahead and thread the M5 rods with the M5 nuts and thread them on to about halfway or so. These are pretty fine threads, so it takes a little while. And these stainless steel rods are also coated. So the nut doesn't spin freely. That's probably pretty good. I suppose it would be safe to attach this to a hand drill or like a power drill and just hold on to the nut. If you crunch the threads on one side, I don't think it wouldn't really cause that much of a problem. So after this part, it's probably a good idea to wash your hands. You could also clean the coating off of these too before you do this. That probably would have been smarter. Try to get these lined up to be about the same. It'll help you a little bit later. Okay, so that looks good. All right, next, let's get these attached to the motors. I want to use the Z couplings. Now, I've tested several different types of materials for the Z couplings, and this is my favorite so far, but I might continue to test some different materials. I mean, I haven't had any problems at all using these, so I don't see a reason why we couldn't just keep using these, but I don't know. I like to try new things sometimes, so I might change these out in future versions of the kit. But go ahead and screw it on to about halfway. If you want to, you can secure these with zip ties. But I haven't zip tied these, and the Prusa i3 prints beautifully. I mean, I haven't had any issues with the Z-axis at all. Okay, that looks pretty good. But if you wanted to, you could put a zip tie on here to secure it. And then also on the motor shaft too. And these just slip onto the motor. And you want to make sure that, you know, this can wobble around. Otherwise, it would cause friction on the axis. If you spin these, you notice the motors will spin. If you want to, you can put, again, you can put zip ties on the motor side as well. So you can put zip ties down here on the motor side to secure them together. Okay, but that looks pretty good. And I think we're ready to go ahead and get this attached to the bottom section of the frame. So let me grab that. I'll slide the carriage to the front. Okay, and then loosen up the M10s here. And space out the fender washers. And then you can slide this section into the frame, into the top section of the frame. Like that. Okay. And then it should fit down all the way just fine. And then what you're going to want to do is hand tighten one of these on one side. And then measure the distance between these nuts here, the M10 nuts. In this case, I'm going to make it 50 millimeters actually, just to keep it easy. So I'm going to move it out a little bit more. You could use a digital caliper for this too if you want to be more precise. Okay, that's about 50. So I'm going to tighten that down and then do the same for the other side. A little bit more, and now I should have, let me just double check. Yeah, it's about 50 millimeters between the nuts on both sides. These can be locked down now with 17 millimeter open box end wrenches. this is really starting to come together now. And next, we can go ahead and put the x-axis on here. Remember earlier I mentioned that these are the M5 nut holders here. So those are going to be going on the inside like this. And then so you just line them up and drop them on. So notice how I have the M5 coming through there and through there. And go ahead and rest it on those nuts. And hold on to this while you grab the last of the smooth rods and drop them through the bearings, the linear bearings. And you'll notice down on the bottom here, there's that slot for where the bearing slides into, or where the smooth rod slides into, like so. Okay, and that'll be on the other side too. Okay. This is sort of just dangling here. The next part is to grab the rest of the Z-axis parts, printed parts. Okay, and these go like this on both sides. These two are the same part, they're just mirrored. This one goes on this side and this one goes on this side. So we'll start with this side, and you want to make sure that the smooth rod fits in here. And then these are going to be mounted with the 10mm M3s. I should have done this first before I slid the X carriage on, but it's not that big of a deal. Or, I mean, before we put the M8 rods on, we should have done these parts. I forgot about them. But I'm sure you're doing just fine. Okay. Now for this side, it might not line up, so I'm just going to dry fit it, and actually it lines up perfectly. Just going to get the bolt started first. The bolt started, drop it on, get it lined up with the smooth rod here. Oops. And then bolt it in. nice. All right. Okay, this is where we're at so far. So we've got the bottom part of the frame and the y-axis attached to the top part of the frame. We've installed the z-axis and the x-axis, and it's really coming together now. There's not a lot more steps to take until it's done. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.